His name was Carl Montefiore. He was a tall, angular guy. Good-looking, I think, with a smug look. Even if he hadn't slept with my wife, I probably would have wanted to beat the crap out of him. But at that moment, his look wasn't smug, it was stunned. When I walked into his office, he thought he was meeting a potential client for his software firm, not a horny husband. He stood up to smile a welcoming smile, and I could see that he didn't even remember my face, even though we'd met several times. "Good morning, Mr. Reagan, isn't it? Nice to meet you. Please have a seat." His handshake was firm and confident, the sign of an experienced salesman. I sat down, stared at him coldly for a few moments, and then uttered, "Actually, it's not Reagan, Carl. It's Proctor. David Proctor is Lauren's husband. Lauren Proctor from your HR department that you've been sleeping with for months now." His face became very tense and he just stared at me without saying anything. I pulled a stack of photos out of an envelope and tossed them in front of him. "This is you and her at the Best Western Kenwood Inn on Montgomery Road, room 128 right behind you. You seem to like the same room every time." Silence again. "Who pays for the room, Carl? You or my lovely wife?" I knew the answer, but I wanted to see what he would say. "I pay," he finally said, looking past me at the far wall. "I have an arrangement with the manager. We do their bookkeeping and book the rooms." Silence again. I took my time. Sure, I was angry, mad as hell, but I'd been doing this for almost 5 weeks now, so there was no rush. "Okay," he said finally. "So, what do you want?" He suddenly looked older, like the energy had gone out of him. "What do you want from me?" "There's a large envelope in my car outside, Carl, addressed to your wife's office. I'm going to stop by the FedEx office as soon as I leave here unless I get a lot of cooperation from you during this visit." His face went pale, but he managed not to jump up from his chair. I admired his composure, but it was amusing. It would be really bad if Emily found out about this." He looked at me. "What do you want me to do?" I held out a piece of paper to him. "Read this, then call my wife right now and talk to her about it. You can change the wording, change whatever fucking pet name you use when you talk to her, whatever. Make it sound natural, the way she expects you to sound, but lay it out the way I wrote it." He read it carefully, then looked up. "I don't know if Laure would agree to that." I laughed. "Carl, I've listened to audio recordings of half a dozen of your little get-togethers with my wife. You guys have been doing a lot more kinky stuff than that." He blushed when I told him I'd listened to them together. He thought about it some more, frowning. Then he said, "And if I do? What then?" I shrugged. "Then you'll be rid of me, and whatever you and Lauren do after today, I don't care." "And that FedEx envelope for my wife?" I shrugged again. "I'll throw it away. Do I have your word on that, Mr. Proctor?" I leaned forward. "You're hardly in a bargaining position, Carl, but yes, I give you my word." He reread my script one more time, then looked at me again, and when I didn't move, sighed, and picked up the phone. "Me and Lauren, pretty much the same old story. No need to retell it. We met when she was in college and I had my first job. It was a blind date. She was good friends with my cousin Marie, who thought we'd be really good friends, and we were. Our courtship was completely typical, but that doesn't mean it wasn't amazing. I fell in love with Lauren by about the 5th date, and she seemed to feel the same way about me. The sex was a little standard at first, a little tentative, but we really opened up to each other and things got better and better. We got married about 14 months later, with Marie as maid of honor and my brother Bobby as best man. Almost immediately we had Tina, an unplanned but wonderful event. She's a tennis star, a great student, and a talented artist. A fantastic, energetic, sweet girl, and I adore her. Lauren and I have always said we only have one child, but we have the best baby ever. I would say Lauren and I have a great marriage and a great life. In fact, I always said that whenever anyone asked how things were going. Sometimes she would get a little flirty with our friends at parties, but then she would always reassure me. After all, our lovemaking was never better than after we dated other people and she became convinced of how attractive she was to men. I'd never doubted Lauren's devotion to me, not once in 19 years. No signs, no fuzzy looks or sudden rushes home to shower, no late nights at work, no hickeys or scratches on her body, nothing. We didn't have more sex or less. Sex didn't get better or worse. I'll never know. Looking back, I think that spring Lauren was a little happier, a little livelier and more fun. But it wasn't much and I never would have noticed if I hadn't found out about her affair. Tina found out about it. It was one of the worst things to happen, although bad was everything. It was a Saturday afternoon in early April of her senior year. I was helping my brother move furniture and Tina was supposed to leave for a day at a tennis tournament, but the courts flooded due to a downpour the day before and the tournament was cancelled. Tina's teammate, Avery, dropped her off at her house around 11 a.m., hours before she was supposed to head home. Tina dropped her bag, pulled a Diet Coke out of the fridge, and reached for the phone to call her friend about the party that was to be held that night. She hit the speaker button, unaware that her mom was on the phone and heard a male voice say, "Your little intimate area again." Stunned, Tina quickly disconnected the phone. After a minute or two, she quietly crept down the hallway and peeked into the bedroom. Lauren was lying on the bed in just her panties. One hand was in her panties and the other was holding the phone. Tina heard her say, "Oh yeah, baby, I can't wait either. We can do it on Monday this week or I'll have to wait until Wednesday." Backing away from the door, Tina disappeared into the kitchen, grabbed her tennis bag, and walked out of the house. She walked to the playground of a nearby elementary school and sat there crying for 2 hours. Then she pulled herself together, wiped her face, and walked back home. For almost 2 weeks, I heard nothing about it. All I knew was that Tina had become withdrawn, sad, and sullen, like a typical teenager, I guess, except she was always so sunny and cheerful. I asked Lauren if something was going on with her, and she was as puzzled as I was. When Tina finally broke down and told me, it was on the way back from sectionals. She had played much worse than usual and lost to a girl from Lockland High School, who she had beaten 4 times in the last 2 years, and I realized she was exhausted. So, I stopped by Starbucks, bought each of us something at the coffee shop and parked the car in the big parking lot of a nearby Walmart and I said, "Baby, tell me what's going on." She shrugged, "Nothing. I didn't play well, that's all." I walked over and touched her shoulder. "Tina, you know I don't care. It's just one tennis match, but you've been miserable for weeks now. Please talk to me. Talk to your clueless old father who loves you." And then I waited. Over the years, I realized that Tina never tolerated silence. She was just staring out the window, not moving, and suddenly I saw tears on her cheeks. Without turning her head, she said, "Daddy, Mommy is cheating on you." What? I was on the verge of screaming at her that this was ridiculous, that this was crazy, that she had lost her mind, but I held back. I bit my tongue and waited, and she told me the whole story, how she came home early, what she heard and what she saw. Of course, I couldn't believe it. I believed what Tina was saying, but I couldn't believe what it meant, what it was supposed to mean. We cried together for a while and then I asked her to keep the secret while I figured it out a bit. So Tina and I made a sort of pact, a little private deal to hide all our suspicions and feelings from Lauren. It actually brought us closer together, even though we've always had a great relationship. So, I did what a poor husband or wife, I guess, always does in situations like this. I spent a few thousand on a private investigator and let him do his thing. 3 weeks later, I had the report, the photos, the audio recording. That Thursday, I went to work, locked the door, turned off the ringer on my phone and got down to business. I read and listened to everything. I cried and cussed. I took off my shoe and threw it across the room, knocking my framed college diploma off the wall. I pounded my fist on the table. I thrashed around the room and sobbed. I sat down at my desk and stared out the window. When I calmed down, around 1:30, I headed to the diner for a late lunch. Over a Reuben sandwich and 2 cups of coffee, I started making plans. Even though we had a perfectly ordinary married life, it still meant a lot to me. I had been passionately in love with Lauren for almost 20 years and I never had any reason to doubt that I was lucky enough to have her marry me. We loved socializing and just being together. We were friends, appreciated the same things and wanted the same things out of life. I'd say we were the happiest couple and the strongest marriage I've ever known. Probably not, right? As soon as I saw the private investigator's report, I knew it was over between us. I might have gotten over a brief affair, but she and Carl Montefiore had been enjoying each other's company for weeks, as far as I could tell, with great pleasure on both sides, and they had an intimate relationship. They were well past the rushed sex stage. They'd played games. She dressed up in sexy lingerie for him. They'd used toys, fiddled with blindfolds and handcuffs, lots of other things much wilder than what was going on in our bedroom. One day, I picked Tina up early from school and the two of us went out for lunch. I spared her all the details, but told her it was a real affair and that I was going to leave her mom. Tina was angry and unhappy. She wanted to go straight home and lash out at Lauren, but I calmed her down. Look, honey, you know your mom loves you. She adores you. She didn't do this to you. She did it to me. Maybe not on purpose to hurt me. I'm sure she thinks I'll never know it, but she betrayed me, not you, and I'll have to deal with that. Do you think you can win an Oscar for a few more weeks? Being a typical daughter, not acting out of the ordinary until after graduation? She nodded reluctantly. I think so, Daddy, if that's what you want. It's just. She started snorting again. It's just, how could she do that to you? To us? You're so wonderful to her and. Her voice tailed off into sobs, and I walked over to her side of the stall and hugged her while she cried. In the end, Tina promised to play the role of loving daughter until graduation. In 3 days, she was leaving for a 10-week junior tennis camp in Colorado, and then after a week at home, she was off to UCLA. I informed her that I was going to end the marriage after she left for the summer. And then I'm going to take a vacation and do some traveling, honey. How about I stop in Denver for a few days and visit her? She wiped her eyes noisily, tried to smile, and replied, Yes, Daddy. That would be great. I took care of all the business beforehand. I found an apartment, set up credit cards and a checking account, took time off work to fly to the West Coast. I was going to visit my roommate in San Francisco for a few days, then rent a car, drive through the Rocky Mountains, hang out with Tina in Colorado for a bit, and then fly home. Once Lauren left for work that morning, I waited for the movers to pick up my piece of furniture and move it to the new apartment along with my clothes, computer, and the rest of my stuff. Then I went to a meeting with Carl Montefiore. I've told you about it before, had lunch and dropped the envelope for Mrs. Montefiore in the FedEx box outside the courthouse. What? Did you think I was gonna keep my word to that asshole after he slept with my wife for weeks? And at 1:45, I parked my car at the restaurant across the street from the Best Western, found a secluded corner, and watched. Lauren drove in and parked right in front of room 128, walked to the main office, came back a minute or two later, put the key card under the mat in front of door 128, used another key to get in and closed the door behind her. She had her shopping bag with her, and I figured she had brought everything Carl had asked for in their little phone conversation. I waited about 10 minutes, then went to the door, pulled a card from under the mat, and walked in. Lauren was there. My wife, the woman I had loved, cherished, and been faithful to for 20 years. She was lying on the bed, dressed in a very sexy black teddy and nothing else, and she was wearing a sleep mask. She couldn't see anything. I saw her tense up when I heard the room door open and close. Carl? God, you scared me, kid. I was just lying here and... Shoo, I whispered. I walked over to the bed and leaned over to whisper in her ear. You're a good girl, aren't you? My little peach. That's what he called her in some of the recordings I'd heard. God knows why. I had put on Carl's cologne, so she had no reason to think of me as her lover. Now I'm here, and I'm going to drive you crazy, I said in a whisper, knowing she wouldn't be able to realize it was me. Without another word, I found a shopping bag on the chair and pulled out the handcuffs. I secured Lauren's hands above her head and then pulled a long rope out of my pocket. Tying one end to the handcuffs, I reached down and shoved the rest of the rope under the bed, then walked around to the other side of the bed, picked it up, and tied the other end to the handcuffs on the other side. Taking 2 shorter pieces of rope, I tied one end to one of her ankles and the other to a leg at the foot of the bed. Now, she was pinned in the middle of the bed, unable to stretch her arms down, unable to sit up, unable to bring her legs together and roll over. "You're a bad girl, aren't you?" I whispered. Without another word, I stripped off my clothes and laid them on the chair by the door. Then I waited silently, knowing she didn't know where I was. "Carl, baby?" She was excited but a little nervous. I made her wait a couple more minutes while she called out to me, or him, I guess, a few more times. "Oh, Carl, what? What hurts, baby? What?" When I was done, she just said, "Damn, baby, that hurt." What the hell was that? Silence ensued. I may have been holding her breath a little, but I didn't care. Finally, she said in a little girl's voice, "That was amazing, baby. You outdid yourself tonight." She giggled and added, "What's gotten into you?" Or should I say, what got into me? "It was great, Carl," she repeated. And when I didn't respond, she asked, "Baby? Carl, where are you?" Fully dressed, I sat down on the bed next to her again. "Right here, little peach," I said in my voice and pulled the sleep mask off her face. Her eyes opened, and she smiled at me, a little taken aback that they were starting to focus. Then she cried out, "Oh," one short sound interrupted for a moment. I looked at her, and her face took on a frightened expression. Her eyes widened and her mouth compressed into a frightened grimace. I had all kinds of angry words at the ready, weeks of rage and misery I was ready to unleash on her. But instead, I said nothing, just watched her face as she digested what had happened in the motel room in the previous 2 hours. Lauren was very pale, she licked her lips nervously, looking at my impassive face. "David, Oh my God, David, I can't bear to think of you." "Darling, it's not that. I mean, it's not that." She couldn't finish the sentence. Perhaps under the circumstances, that was not surprising. I watched her in silence, and tears began to drip from the corners of her eyes. No, it isn't. You can't, it's not." I stood there looking at her, not saying anything, and her sobs got louder and louder. That's when I pulled out my prepaid cell phone and pressed a preset number. When the voice on the other end said, "Eyewitness News Hotline," I answered, "Yes, I am at the Best Western Kenwood Hotel on Montgomery Road, and there is some sort of domestic dispute or sex going on in the next room, room 128. "Yes," I continued. "I can't tell if a woman is being raped or not, but there's a lot of yelling and screaming. I already called 911, but I figured I'd call you guys too." Without waiting for a response, I hung up. Lauren stopped crying. She turned her head and looked at me with a look of horror on her face. "No, baby, please don't let them. Don't let anyone see me. Please, baby. I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to hurt you. Please, Dave." Looking her straight in the eyes, I dialed the phone number again. 911, what's your emergency?" A voice asked. "Yeah, I'm at the Best Western Kenwood Hotel, and some guy is having sex with a woman in room 128, and the door is wide open, meaning you can see everything. I was walking by with the kids and, oh my God, he tied her to the bed and everything." I hung up the phone. Lauren was screaming wildly, trying to get free. "Please, baby. Please, 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 please. You won't leave me here, I'm begging you, please." I leaned over and covered her mouth with my hand, holding her face tightly so she couldn't break free. Her eyes looked up at me in panic. I held her like that for a few minutes, just looking at her, looking at the face of the woman I had loved for most of my adult life. And then I let her go and walked out of the room, ignoring her desperate screams and pleas coming to me. I used a pillow from the couch to prop the door open and walked out into the parking lot, taking a seat on a bench near the street. About 4 minutes later, a large Eyewitness News van pulled into the parking lot. I waited until 2 guys, one with a large camera, headed toward the open door of room 128, and then I crossed the street, got in my car and drove away. There has to be another scene, doesn't there? Wouldn't it be nice to end it right there with Lauren tied to the bed, the camera crew heading into the room, the police on their way? But there are always consequences, whether you like them or not. Unless someone's dead, then there are no consequences, at least for themselves. It was a Saturday in mid-September, and I was driving back to the house Lauren, Tina, and I had once lived in together, only now I was living in an apartment downtown. Tina was living in a UCLA dorm, and the house was for sale. Lauren couldn't make the mortgage payments on her own. After Lauren and I had a little adventure that ended in marriage, I flew to San Francisco for a vacation. I saw my brother, drove through the Rocky Mountains, and had a great time with my daughter. Then I came home and started building a new life, the life of a single guy. I asked my lawyer to start divorce proceedings and avoided any contact with Lauren except for a text message saying I was giving her until November 1st to buy my half of the house. After that, I was going to sell it. She called and texted me for weeks, but I didn't respond. I didn't want to tell her anything, and I didn't want to hear anything. My friend has been following the press coverage of my little escapade. They wrote a couple articles about it in the local paper, no pictures alas, and ran a story on the local eyewitness news channel at 11 for 3 days. They shot material that could be used. The camera zooms in on the open motel door, then partially captures the bound woman on the bed. Unfortunately, Lauren's face was not seen, and the news channel did not name any names, no doubt to avoid a lawsuit. All that would have been fine, but Mrs. Montefiore, as they say, was in the process of exposing her husband, and she made enough noise in the company to get Lauren fired. Rumors were flying among our friends about who the unnamed lady from that crazy motel room story was, and that suited me just fine. Lauren had to take an administrative job 20 miles from home at a lower salary. I knew she couldn't keep the house, and from what Tina told me, she was miserable and apologized all week until Tina came back and then left for college again. Tina was still so angry that she barely spoke to her mother. I pulled into the driveway, parked, and walked into the house. Lauren had agreed to sign the divorce papers and power of attorney for the house if I came over to talk to her. She was sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and looked up at me when I walked in. "Hi, David," she said quietly. "Lauren." She looked older and a little smaller. She hadn't been sleeping well and probably hadn't been eating too well. My heart didn't overflow with sympathy. "Would you like some coffee?" "No, thanks." I poured myself a glass of water and sat down. She gestured to the counter and said, "All the papers are here." I signed them. "How much time do I have before I have to look for a place to live?" "Probably at least 2 or 3 months. Even if the house sells instantly, people usually need a couple months before the deal closes." "I'll let you know." There was silence. "I know it's over between us," she said suddenly. "I've been thinking about it for a long time, as you can probably imagine. I've been thinking, besides asking myself why I was such a fool, I've been thinking about how I would feel if the situation was reversed, if you were having an affair behind my back. And I couldn't even imagine taking you back under any circumstances. The feeling of betrayal, the shock and humiliation, the anger at being cheated on, lied to, and treated with such contempt." She looked at me with an unhappy but dry look. "I'm just trying to say that I understand, David. Or at least I sort of understand. I won't claim to know what it's like for you. If there was some way to, I don't know, find a way to give me another chance. I'd do anything, give you all my loyalty and love to atone for what I've done. But I don't think that's possible." Her eyes darted upward to look at my face, but all she could see there was a blank stare. "So, what I really wanted to say is that I'm sorry. I'm sorry for cheating on you. I'm sorry for acting like a harlot. I'm sorry for not respecting all the love, devotion, and support you've given me since the day we met. I'm sure my apology means little to you, but you deserve it, and I wanted to bring it to you anyway." She looked at me, no doubt hoping I would say something even slightly comforting, but I didn't. I just stared at her. No nod. No aha. Just staring. "Did Tina tell you how we found out?" She nodded, her face tense with pain. I asked her several times, and finally she told me. "I feel so awful about it. If anything, David, it was never about humiliating you or hurting you. I know I was an idiot to think I could keep it a secret, but that's what I was trying to do. We were. At least we thought we were being very careful." She started to tell me about how it all started, and I held up my hand. I don't want to hear it. I don't care how it started. I don't care why you did it, how long it lasted, and all that. You wanted to tell me you were sorry? Okay, you did. Anything else? I knew I was being a heartless bastard, and it was a little surprising that it came so easily to me. She was hurting, and I found that I wasn't the least bit interested in comforting her or even being decent to her. I'd committed a crime. I'd done time. She destroyed my marriage, shattered my happy life into a million shards. As I waited, a tear rolled down her cheek. No, David. I don't think there's anything more that can be done. Without another word, I took the signed papers, turned and walked out of the house.